Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I am Braden. This is Langley Outdoors Academy, and thank you for stopping by. All right, guys, what we're going to talk about is a mixed bag. We've got some L's on the bump stock front. We've got ATF thinking that they've won. We've got Chevron deference on the crosshairs with the EPA versus West Virginia decision coming from SCOTUS this last month. There is a lot to talk about, and I'm going to walk you through right now why the gun controllers and the ATF might have a leg up in this one little portion of the bump stock ban. But coming down the road in the next steps, I think this might turn out differently. I'm going to walk you through why I think that, and I cannot wait to hear what you guys think in the comments field below. Now, as always, everything is in the description box. I always bring receipts so you guys can follow along. I'm going to say a quick word from our sponsor who made this week's videos possible, and then we're going to hit on their side. And like I said, I cannot wait to hear what you guys think about this because there's a lot of nuance in here. Now, XS Sights is known for making the fastest sights in any light. For more than 25 years, the XS team has created some of the most innovative sights on the market today for pistols, rifles, and shotguns. Whether used for personal defense or hunting, these sights are designed and built to be the absolute best for their specific purpose. Now, XS Sights has also offered you a 10% coupon for being a viewer of this channel for the rest of the week. Use code XSSights10 in the link in the description box below for your discount. And thank you so much to XS Sights for making the videos this week possible, but also for you guys having the option for that discount if you needed it. Now, let's get into this because we have got all sorts of things to talk about. Like I mentioned, we've got ATF, bump stock bans, Chevron deference, West Virginia versus EPA. Let's get it. All right. From Reuters. So you know there's a lefty tilt on this. ATF beats back gun rights group challenged a bump stock ban. So, of course, we're going to talk about the bump stock ban that just got smacked around in the appeals court. Check this out. Reuters. A federal appeals court on Tuesday upheld a 2019 federal rule banning so-called bump stocks, a rapid-fire gun attachment that was used in the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history. Well, if you're not familiar with what a bump stock is and you're new to the channel or new to the industry, essentially it's a device that harnesses the recoil and helps you reset the trigger faster so you can pull it faster. It is not a machine gun. It still requires two actions, a release and a pull of a trigger. It's not a machine gun. It's very similar to when people reclassify machine gun or pieces of metal as machine guns. Basically, change the definition and therefore it's something else. And that's kind of what we're getting into, and that's where Chevron deference is going to come in. That's where West Virginia versus EPA is going to come in. But we're going to get that in 1 second. Let's keep going and show you what happened. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit ruled that guns equipped with bump stocks qualify as machine guns, which federal law almost entirely bans. I'm talking about the NFA here. If you classify something as a machine gun, it's going to go into the National Firearms Act. National Firearms Act, machine guns no good unless you have a tax stamp. You got to pay the man to have your privileges. That's what that means, right? The decision was a setback for the Sacramento, California-based nonprofit Firearms Policy Coalition and other gun right advocacy groups that had sued to challenge the rule. Now keep in mind, it's not a machine gun. Doesn't make something a machine gun just because you call it something a machine gun using something called Chevron deference, which we're going to get to in 1 second, doesn't make it so. Kind of like when you call something not a recession when it is a definition of a recession, kind of like that. Anyway, quote, "We are disappointed but not surprised at the result," said Eric Jaffe, who represents the gun rights groups. Quote, "We think the court made a number of factual and legal errors that we plan in pointing out in further appellate proceedings." So it's going to the next level. And that's where this is going to get interesting because this appeals court was in a D.C. court. Come on. Come on. What do you think is going to happen in a D.C. court? From the same zone that brought you the Heller decision or initiated the Heller decision. Former President Donald Trump had pledged to ban the devices soon after a gunman used them to shoot and kill 58 people at a country music festival in Las Vegas in October of 2017. And that's absolutely true. That came under the Trump watch. In December of 2018, the administration announced that a rule classifying bump stock equipped guns as machine guns. Again, they are not. A 1986 amendment to the National Firearms Act and Gun Control Act banned nearly all sales of newly manufactured machine guns. If you qualify this thing as a machine gun and it becomes a machine gun, it's not going to happen. That's essentially what that means. NFA, you got to get a tax stamp. Gun Control Act, you can't produce any more machine guns. I mean, it's not going to happen because every time you put a bump stock on a gun, it becomes a machine gun. So that's the crux of the position here, all right? Now, this part right here is where we get into where they start to lose footing, essentially, especially in the next levels. The gun rights group sued the ATF in Washington, arguing that the agency lacked the authority to expand the definition of machine gun, We're going to Chevron deference. We're going to executive bureaucracies redefining what Congress passes law. Congress's job is to pass the law and codify it. Executive branch is supposed to enforce it. ATF is a bureaucracy underneath the executive branch. They can't do what they're doing here, which is why you're seeing a lot of the actions. This is where Chevron deference comes in. This is where West Virginia versus EPA comes in. Judge Dabney Friedrich denied their motion for a preliminary injunction and later granted the government summary judgment, finding the agency was entitled to deference in interpreting the definition of machine gun under federal law. Chevron deference. That's where this is. They've got deference. They can make whatever rules they want because while the law was not perfectly clear and crystal clear, they can kind of read between the lines and make the new law. They're interpreting law, which is specifically what the West Virginia versus the EPA decision from SCOTUS last month came out and said they cannot do. This is important. Now, here is the actual definition for Chevron deference. Let me get the right part. Okay, here we go. In Chevron, the Supreme Court set forth a legal test as to when the court should defer to the agency's answer or interpretation, holding that such judicial deference is appropriate where the agency's answer is not unreasonable, so long as Congress had not spoken directly to the precise issue at question. That's where they're pulling all this power from. Well, they didn't say bump stocks were something that became machine guns, so therefore, if machine guns are bad and that thing fires quickly, then that means it's a machine gun, therefore we can ban it. That's the logic. Now, it's coming from Chevron deference, okay? But according to this bad boy right here, which came out, I'm pretty sure about 3-4 weeks ago, Supreme Court of the United States, West Virginia versus Environmental Protection Agency. What this ruling said, this was so massive because it stacked almost on equivalence with Bruin because it had such a profound impact on curtailing the ATF's power, the EPA's power. Executive bureaucracies can no longer just redefine something and then make laws because they redefined it. In the actual case in point, they labeled carbon as a toxin, and then they said, oh, because it's a toxin, we can regulate it more heavily, and the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that. Well, if the Supreme Court says you can't do that with carbon and the EPA, you also can't do that with interpreting law in between the lines Congress provided from their legislation on the Second Amendment. And that's where this is going to get into trouble. This is going to keep going down the road. This is one fight. This is one little itty-bitty scrap. It's going to keep on going. It will probably end up at the Supreme Court, at which point that'll be spicy and we'll have a whole other Bruin decision on our hands. And particularly when the West Virginia versus EPA decision has already been decided. And that's what I've got for you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments field below, and I will see you tomorrow morning on the bullet points. I'm Braden. See you later.